Tonight we are going to slow down together and rest inside 12 gentle stories about letting go. These stories come from the quiet heart of the Christian tradition. They remind us that God does not ask us to stop caring. He simply teaches us that we were never meant to carry everything alone. Perhaps your body is resting while your thoughts are still working. Perhaps some part of you is trying to finish tomorrow before tonight has ended. Nothing needs to be forced away. Nothing needs to be solved. There is grace for the part of you that is still awake. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you are listening from. It is quietly comforting to know who else is awake tonight. You do not need to be Catholic to listen. You do not need to know anything about the saints, the Gospels, or theology. You only need to be here. There is nothing to figure out tonight. There is nowhere else to be. You can let the words pass gently. You can be still without remembering them. Thank you for joining us here at Midnight Chapel. Let us begin. There is an old image of a farmer walking home at the end of day. The field behind him had been newly planted. Long rows of dark earth crossed the hillside, and every row held seeds too small to see. The farmer had worked since morning. He had opened the soil with a worn wooden tool. He had carried seed in a cloth bag at his side. He had covered each row carefully before moving to the next. His hands were tired now. Dust rested in the lines of his palms. His shoulders felt the honest weight of the day. The work was finished. At least it was finished for him. The evening was mild and still. A pale band of light remained above the distant trees. Birds crossed it slowly, returning to places the farmer could not see. He closed the small gate behind him. Then he began the path toward home. Yet after several steps, he turned around. The field looked unchanged. It looked empty. Nothing in its appearance suggested that anything had begun. The farmer knew this was normal. He had planted before. He understood the patience of soil. Still, a familiar worry moved quietly inside him. Had he planted deeply enough? Had the seeds been covered well? Would the night become too cold? Would the rain arrive too soon? Or not soon enough? The questions did not shout. They simply followed him down the path. One question became another. One small uncertainty opened the door to the next. He walked a little farther. Then he returned to the gate. He pressed the latch with his thumb and stepped back into the field. He bent beside the nearest row. With 2 fingers, he moved a little soil aside until he found one seed resting in the darkness. It was still there. Nothing had happened yet. He covered it again and pressed the soil flat. Then he stood, brushed his hands, and told himself that he could go home. But another thought came. Perhaps the next row was different. So he checked another seed, then another. Each seed was exactly where he had left it. None offered him assurance. None explained what would happen beneath the ground. The farmer finally heard footsteps on the path. An older woman was walking toward the village with an empty basket over one arm. She had tended fields longer than he had been alive. She stopped beside the gate. "You have planted late," she said. "I finished before the light was gone," the farmer replied. The woman looked at the places where he had opened the rows again. "Then why are you still planting?" "I am not planting," he said. "I am making sure the seeds are safe." She rested the basket against her leg. Her face held no criticism, only patience. "And have they become safer?" The farmer looked down at his hands. The question was gentle. He did not need to defend himself. "I do not know," he said. The woman nodded. "That is often what the night gives us. We do not know." Together they looked across the rows. The last light was leaving the hill. The earth was becoming one soft shade of gray. "There is work that belongs to your hands," the woman said, "and there is work that does not." The farmer waited. "You opened the soil, you gave it seed, you covered what you planted. Now the earth must hold what you cannot." She lifted her empty basket. "You cannot pull a green shoot from the ground by staying awake beside it." Then she continued toward the village. The farmer remained near the gate. He listened to her steps grow quiet. He looked once more at the field. Nothing visible had changed, and yet the field was not empty. It was holding everything he had placed inside it. The farmer closed the gate again. This time he did not return. At home, a small lamp waited near the window. A bowl of soup stood on the table. He sat down slowly and felt how tired his body had become. The field remained beyond the glass. He could not see it now. That was difficult at first. He had spent the day seeing each movement of his own hands. He had watched the tool enter the soil. He had watched the seed fall. He had watched the earth cover it. Now the next movement would happen without him. He ate quietly. He washed the bowl. He lowered the lamp. Before lying down, he looked through the window once more. The hillside had disappeared into darkness. The farmer could not see the rows. He could not see the gate. He could not see a single seed. But darkness had not erased them. They were held. The earth held them without noise. The night held the field. God held the slow mystery that no human hand could hurry. The farmer lay down. His mind returned to the seeds. He imagined them beneath the soil, small and silent. He imagined the cold earth around them. Then he remembered the woman's words. "There is work that belongs to your hands. There is work that does not." He did not need to decide which seed would open first. He did not need to command the roots. He did not need to measure the darkness. His part was finished. Grace had its own work. The farmer did not understand how a seed opened. He knew only that the hard outer shell eventually surrendered. What looked like breaking became the beginning of growth. The seed did not hold itself closed forever. It let go. It let the darkness surround it. It let the soil press near. It surrendered the shape it had known, and a hidden life began to move. No one watched this happen. No one needed to. Through the night, the village became still. Lamps went dark one by one. Doors remained closed. Families slept beneath simple roofs. The field continued its quiet work. Moisture gathered around the seeds. The earth settled. Small changes began where no eye could follow them. The farmer slept. Morning did not bring green shoots. The field looked much as it had before. The farmer walked to the gate and felt the old question rise again. Nothing had appeared. Was nothing happening? He remembered that hidden and forgotten are not the same thing. He left the gate closed. During the day, he repaired a fence near his house. He carried water. He spoke with a neighbor. The field remained beyond him, holding its unseen work. That night, he slept again, and the next night. Some evenings were easy, others were not. Sometimes he wanted to return with a lamp and open the rows. He wanted proof before he allowed himself peace, but proof was not his to receive yet. Trust came first. Trust was not certainty. It was the gentle surrender of needing certainty tonight. The farmer began to notice that much of life continued beyond his attention. The moon crossed the roof while he slept. Water moved through roots. Birds rested in branches without asking whether dawn would return. The world did not require his vigilance. God was present there. God was present in the field he could not see. God was present in the seed that had not appeared. God was present in the patient interval between planting and growth. That interval was not empty. It was kept by grace. After many days, a thin line of green appeared above one row. It was so small that the farmer nearly passed without seeing it. He knelt beside it. The shoot had risen without his supervision. It had come through darkness. It had not needed him to stay awake. Soon there was another, then another. The farmer smiled. But the deepest gift was not the green across the field. The deepest gift had arrived during the nights before it. He had learned to leave the seeds alone. He had learned that care and control are not the same thing. Care plants the seed. Control digs it up again. Care offers what it can. Control demands to see what comes next. God had not asked the farmer to stop caring. God had taught him to let go of the part that was never his. Perhaps there is something in your own life that feels like that field tonight. Something has been planted, but nothing can yet be seen. A conversation has ended without an answer. A person you love is walking a road you cannot walk for them. A decision remains beneath the soil. You do not have to dig it up tonight. You do not have to watch it grow. The darkness does not mean it is forgotten. Silence does not mean grace is absent. The work you cannot see may still be safe. You can surrender the field. You can let go of the gate. You can be still while God remains awake. This is not indifference. It is trust. This is not abandoning what matters. It is allowing what matters to rest in hands larger than yours. The seed is safe. The field is safe. And you are safe. Another year, rain came often. The farmer worried that the roots would receive too much. Again, the future refused to obey his preferred shape. The field taught him that trust is not confidence in perfect weather. It is confidence that no weather places us outside the care of God. Dry earth can be safe. Wet earth can be safe. An uncertain heart can be safe. The farmer began ending each day beside the gate. He did not inspect the rows. He simply stood there long enough to notice what belonged to him and what did not. The work of his hands belonged to him. The hidden outcome did not. Then he closed the gate. This became a quiet ritual of grace, not a rejection of the field, an act of love toward it. By closing the gate, he allowed the field to be more than an object of fear. He allowed himself to be more than a watcher. He was also a person who could return home, a person who could eat bread, lower a lamp, and receive sleep, a beloved person whose value was not measured by the weather. The gate closed. God remained. Let us settle inside another story. There is a story sometimes told about a brother who worked in the kitchen of an old monastery. His name has been forgotten. Perhaps that is fitting. He was not known for great speeches or remarkable journeys. He spent his days among wooden bowls, iron pots, sacks of flour, and the ordinary warmth of bread. He rose before sunrise. He carried water from the courtyard well. He opened the shutters and watched the first gray light settle across the tables. Then he began. There were vegetables to wash. There was grain to measure. There were knives to clean and fires to tend. Each task was small. Together they filled the day. The brother liked the kitchen. He liked the usefulness of his hands. He liked the way a room changed when bread was baking. Yet he found it difficult to stop. When the evening bell sounded, the other brothers left their work. The gardener placed his tools beneath the wall. The porter closed the outer gate. The man who copied books covered his ink. The kitchen brother remained. There was always one more thing. A cup stood near the basin. A cloth needed rinsing. A small pile of flour remained beneath the table. None of these things was urgent, yet each seemed to ask for his attention. He told himself that he would rest after everything was finished. Everything was never finished. One evening, he cleaned the tables twice. He arranged the bowls by size. He checked the oven, though the fire was already low. Outside, the monastery settled into silence. The stone passageways became cool. A single lamp burned near the chapel. The brother could hear the quiet around him, but he could not enter it. He found another pot. He filled it with water and began to scrub. An older brother appeared in the doorway. He wore a wool cloak over his work clothes. His face looked tired and kind. "The bell sounded long ago," he said. "I heard it," the kitchen brother replied. "I am nearly finished." The older man looked around. The tables were clean. The bowls were stacked. The room was more orderly than it needed to be. "What remains?" he asked. The younger brother lifted the pot. This, and after the pot, the brother looked toward the shelf. A folded cloth was slightly uneven. He did not answer. The older man entered the kitchen. On the far table stood a bowl covered with linen. He lifted one corner of the cloth. Beneath it, dough rested in the dark bowl. "You forgot this," he said. The kitchen brother set down the pot and came closer. "I did not forget. It must remain until morning. You are leaving it unfinished." "It is not ready yet." The older brother nodded. "Then perhaps it knows something you do not." The younger man smiled faintly, unsure what was meant. The older brother covered the dough again. "It grows because you leave it alone." The kitchen became quiet. The fire gave one soft movement behind the iron grate. The dough rested beneath the cloth. Nothing appeared to happen. Yet the brother knew that by morning it would have changed. "Some work is completed by doing," the older man said. "Some work is completed by waiting." He reached toward the lamp and lowered the flame. "Come, let the kitchen be unfinished." The younger brother looked once more at the pot. Water still covered its bottom. A faint mark remained along one side. He felt resistance inside himself. It was such a small thing. That was why it mattered. If he could not leave one pot until morning, how would he ever leave the larger, unfinished things of life? He dried his hands slowly. Then he followed the older man into the corridor. They did not speak. Their steps passed beneath low arches. Moonlight lay in pale squares across the floor. At the end of the passage, the kitchen brother stopped. "What if I forget the pot tomorrow?" The older man turned. "Then someone else may wash it, and if no one does, then it will remain a pot that needs washing." The younger brother waited for more. No more was needed. A pot that needed washing was not a disaster. An unfinished task was not an accusation. It was simply something that had not yet been done. The brother had given unfinished things a power they did not possess. He had allowed them to decide whether he deserved peace. That night, he lay in his narrow room beneath a wool blanket. He could picture the kitchen clearly. The pot was still there. The cloth remained uneven. The dough was rising. His thoughts returned to each detail. He felt the urge to stand, walk back through the corridor, and complete what he had left. But the monastery was resting. The gardener was not holding his tools. The porter was not guarding the gate with his own eyes. The copyist was not watching the ink dry. All of them had surrendered the day. The brother remained in bed. He let the pot be a pot. He let the cloth be uneven. He let the dough rise without him. The room held almost nothing. A wooden cross rested on the wall. A small stool stood beside the bed. Moonlight reached the edge of the floor. There was nothing for him to manage there. He noticed his hands beneath the blanket. They were empty. For most of the day, those hands had carried, stirred, washed, lifted, and arranged. Now they held nothing. At first, emptiness felt like failure. Then it felt like rest. The brother began to understand that God was not present only in the work of his hands. God was also present when his hands became still. Grace did not leave the kitchen when he did. Grace remained beside the cooling oven. Grace rested over the covered bowl. Grace held the monastery through the hours when no one worked. The brother let go. He slept. Before dawn, the bell called the community into another day. The brother dressed and walked back to the kitchen. The pot waited by the basin. Nothing terrible had happened. The cloth was still uneven. Nothing had been lost, and beneath the linen, the dough had risen above the rim of the bowl. The brother touched it gently. It was alive with quiet change. The older man entered behind him. "The kitchen worked while you slept," he said. The younger brother looked at the dough. "God worked while I slept." The older man smiled. "That is true every night." They began the morning tasks together. The pot was washed. The cloth was folded. The dough became bread. Nothing had required fear. Over the following days, the younger brother practiced leaving small things unfinished. He did not become careless. He did not stop loving his work. He simply listened when the bell sounded. At first, he left only one cup, then a broom leaning near the wall, then a stack of bowls that could wait until morning. Each unfinished object became a small lesson in surrender. The cup said, "Tomorrow can come without your help." The broom said, "Dust is not an emergency." The bowls said, "Your worth does not depend on an empty table." The bread said nothing. It simply rose. Some nights, the brother still felt uneasy. Old habits do not always leave quickly. He had spent years believing peace must be earned through completion. Grace taught him another rhythm: work, then surrender. Care, then let go. Offer what you can, then rest. This was not a rule imposed upon him. It was mercy given to him. He began to notice how often God worked through things that were unfinished. A winter branch looked empty while holding the shape of spring. A dark sky looked vacant while carrying the approach of dawn. A half-written page waited without shame. Unfinished did not mean abandoned. It meant still being held. Years passed. The brother grew older in the same kitchen. His steps became slower. Younger hands joined his at the tables. One evening, he found a new brother scrubbing a clean pot after the bell. The young man looked embarrassed when he was noticed. "I am nearly finished," he said. The older kitchen brother recognized the words. He walked to the bowl of dough and lifted the cloth. "Then let this finish the lesson," he said. The younger man looked puzzled. "It grows because we leave it alone." Together they lowered the lamp. Together they left the pot beside the basin. Together they walked into the quiet corridor. The wisdom had passed from one tired person to another, not through a sermon, through a bowl of bread. Perhaps your own mind has a kitchen like that tonight. There may be tasks lined along its walls, a message unanswered, a room not arranged, work that could have been better. Something you intended to finish before the day ended. You do not have to complete it now. The bell has sounded. You are allowed to leave the room. Being still is not a prize for finishing everything. If it were, no one would ever rest. Life always leaves something on the table. God does not wait at the end of your completed list. God is present beside you while the list remains unfinished. That is grace. You can let go of the pot. You can let go of the uneven cloth. You can surrender what today did not contain enough hours to complete. Tomorrow does not need to be carried tonight. The work is safe. The people you love are safe. You are safe. Some things are completed by doing. Some things are completed by waiting. And some things are placed gently into the hands of God, because human hands were never large enough to hold them through the night. The old brother eventually learned to recognize the evening bell before it sounded. He could feel the day approaching its natural edge. Light moved higher on the kitchen wall. The warmth of the oven softened. Footsteps in the corridor became fewer. He no longer used those signs to hurry. He used them to release. He would choose the final task with care. Perhaps he covered the bread. Perhaps he filled a jar for morning. Then he stopped, even if another useful action remained. There was almost always another action. That was the lesson. The world offers no perfect stopping place. We receive one through trust. Sometimes a young brother asked how he knew when enough had been done. The old man never gave a measurement. He pointed toward the window where evening gathered over the courtyard. "The day is leaving," he would say. "Let it leave in peace." The words were not about productivity. They were about mercy. A day could depart without being judged. A human being could surrender the remaining work without shame. At night, the kitchen became a room of quiet objects. Bowls rested inside one another. Spoons lay beside the stove. Flour settled invisibly after the last movement. Nothing demanded an audience. The lamp near the chapel remained burning. Its small flame did not complete the work. It simply witnessed that presence continued when effort ceased. God was there before the kitchen opened. God remained after it closed. The brothers' labor lived inside that larger faithfulness. It did not create it. It did not need to sustain it. This brought him peace. He could love the day fully and still let it go. There is another story that points to the same thing. There is a story told among the desert fathers about an old teacher and a bow. Like many stories carried across centuries, it is simple enough to remember and quiet enough to enter slowly. A young man had come to live near the old teacher. He wanted to become peaceful. He wanted to learn trust. He wanted every part of his life to belong to God. These were gentle desires, yet he carried them harshly. He woke before everyone else. He worked after others had stopped. When he sat in silence, he judged every wandering thought. When he became tired, he treated tiredness as another weakness to overcome. Nothing was allowed to be ordinary. Every moment became a test. The young man believed surrender meant forcing himself into perfect obedience. He held his body tightly. He held his thoughts tightly. He held even his hope with a closed hand. The old teacher noticed. He noticed the young man's hurried steps. He noticed how his shoulders remained raised when he sat. He noticed how the young man apologized for needing food, sleep, and time. The teacher did not correct him immediately. Some lessons arrive better through an image. One afternoon, a traveler came through the desert carrying a hunting bow. The traveler asked for water and a place to rest from the sun. The old teacher welcomed him beneath a woven shelter. He brought a clay cup and a little bread. The traveler placed the bow against the wall. The young man looked at it with interest. He had never used one. The old teacher lifted the bow. He asked the traveler for permission to hold it. Then he drew the string back. The wood bent. The cord became tight. The teacher held it there. At first, no one spoke. Wind moved a thin line of sand across the ground. The traveler drank from the cup. The teacher continued, holding the bow open. After a while, the traveler looked concerned. "You may release it," he said. The teacher kept the string drawn. "It is a strong bow," he replied. "It is," said the traveler, "but not if you keep it bent forever." The young man watched. The teacher asked, "Will releasing the string make the bow useless?" "No," the traveler said. "Releasing it preserves the bow." The old man let go. The cord returned with one low sound. The wood rested in its natural curve. The teacher placed it against the wall again. No explanation followed. The traveler finished his bread and later continued along the road. The bow left with him. The image remained. That evening, the young man sat near the teacher outside their small dwellings. The heat had faded. A first star appeared above the distant hills. "I think the bow was for me," the young man said. The teacher looked toward the quiet horizon. The bow was a bow. The young man waited. Then the teacher smiled, "But perhaps you were ready to notice it." They sat in silence again. The young man became aware of his own body. His jaw was held tight. His hands were closed against his knees. Even while sitting beneath an open sky, he was braced against something he could not name. He opened his hands. Nothing fell from them. "If I relax," he said, "I am afraid I will become careless." Did the bow become careless? No. Did it cease to be a bow? No. The teacher nodded. Rest does not make you less faithful. It allows faithfulness to remain gentle. The young man lowered his shoulders. The movement was small. The fear beneath it was not. He had believed God required him to remain stretched between effort and expectation. He had mistaken tension for devotion. The teacher picked up a handful of sand. It rested easily in his palm. Then he closed his fist. Sand slipped between his fingers. "Some things are safe best without gripping," he said. He opened his hand again. A little sand remained. The young man looked toward the first star. It was clear and still. It did not strain to shine. It did not ask whether its light was sufficient. Night came slowly. The young man returned to his room. He lay on a simple mat, but his mind began its usual work. Had he done enough that day? Had he listened well enough? Had he surrendered correctly? Even letting go had become something he tried to control. He remembered the bow. The string had returned to rest in a single movement. It had not explained itself. It had not earned permission. The young man let his hands open beside him. He could not force his thoughts to become still, so he stopped asking them to become still. They moved for a while. He let them move. This was new. He had always treated a wandering mind as a door that must be shut. Now, he allowed each thought to pass through the room without following it. One thought concerned tomorrow's work. Another concerned an old mistake. Another was only the memory of the traveler's cup resting on the ground. The young man did not need to keep any of them. He let go. He did not fall asleep immediately. That was not failure. He simply remained beneath the night with less resistance. God was not waiting for perfect silence. God was present in the returning. Each time the young man noticed his body tightening, he remembered the curve of the bow. He released what he could. He surrendered what remained. That was enough. In the morning, the old teacher found him carrying water from the well. "Did you rest?" he asked. "Not perfectly," the young man said. The teacher laughed softly. "Then you rested like a human being." The young man smiled. Nothing about his duties changed that day. He carried water. He swept sand from a doorway. He repaired part of the woven shelter, but he began to leave a little space inside each task. He carried the jar without hurrying. He swept without needing the ground to remain clean. He repaired what he could without demanding that it last forever. When the sun became warm, he sat in the shade. At first, rest felt unfamiliar. His mind offered reasons to stand again. There was always more water to carry. There was always more sand. The teacher sat beside him. "The bow is not always drawn," he said. The young man nodded. Days became weeks. The lesson entered him gradually. He still tightened sometimes. He still believed, for an hour or an afternoon, that everything depended on his effort. Then something reminded him, a branch moving freely in the wind. A sleeping animal in the shade. A clay jar set down after being carried. Each ordinary thing seemed to repeat the same invitation. Release does not mean ruin. Rest does not mean neglect. Surrender does not mean that love has ended. It means love no longer needs to be afraid. The young man had come to the desert, seeking a great answer. God taught him through a traveling bow, an open hand, and a teacher who did not rush to explain. The lesson was smaller than he expected. It was also kinder. Years later, another young visitor came to him with the same raised shoulders and hurried steps. By then, the student had become an old teacher himself. He listened to the visitor speak about discipline, effort, and fear. He listened without interruption. Then he found a branch that bent without breaking. He held it gently between his hands. "There is strength in this wood," he said, "but its strength includes the ability to return." The visitor did not understand immediately. That was all right. Some wisdom waits quietly until the body is ready to receive it. Perhaps you have been holding yourself like that bow. Perhaps you have confused tension with safety. Some part of you may believe that if you soften, everything will slip away. You are not required to remain drawn through the night. You can return to your natural curve. You can let your hands be empty. You do not need to surrender perfectly. You do not need to make your thoughts disappear. You do not need to turn rest into another task. There is grace for an unsettled mind. There is peace that does not depend on perfect stillness. You are safe even while learning to let go. God does not love you more when you are tense. God does not withdraw when you become tired. Your limits were never hidden from Him. This is not weakness. It is truth. The bow can rest. The hand can open. The heart can surrender what it has gripped too tightly. Nothing, beloved, is lost by being placed into the care of God. The old teacher sometimes walked with his student at dusk. Their path crossed a wide place where wind had shaped the sand into low curves. Each day the ground looked different. Their own footprints from the morning were usually gone. At first, the young man found this discouraging. He liked visible signs of progress. He wanted the road to preserve evidence that he had crossed it faithfully. The teacher did not mind the changing sand. "The path carried us," he said. "It does not need to remember our feet." The young man looked behind them. Wind softened the edges of each print. He thought of all the moments he had tried to preserve. Good work, kind words, days when he felt peaceful. He feared that if he stopped holding them, they would vanish. But a gift does not become less real when the moment passes. Grace does not need to be stored. It can be received again. The two men continued until the dwellings became small behind them. Then they turned home. The young man noticed that walking required a repeated release. One foot rested on the earth while the other let go. Without release, there could be no next step. The body understood surrender before the mind named it. Hold, then release. Receive, then release. Rest, then rise again. This rhythm was everywhere. Breath arrived and departed. Daylight came and faded. The hand closed around a jar and opened after setting it down. God had woven letting go into ordinary life. It was not a distant spiritual achievement. It was already happening through every gentle transition. The young man did not have to invent surrender. He only had to stop resisting its kindness. You can let go now. You can be still. Consider now a different image. The Gospels hold a night on the water. It begins gently, with a small boat leaving one shore for another. The day had been long. Many people had gathered near the lake. Voices had filled the hours. Questions had been asked. Stories had been told. Now evening lowered itself across the water. The men in the boat knew the lake well. Some had worked there since they were young. They knew the shape of the shore, the pull of the current, and the feel of changing wind. They pushed away from land. The boat carried no great comfort. It was wood, rope, cloth, and the knowledge of those who guided it. Water touched its sides with a familiar rhythm, Jesus was with them. He had given much of himself during the day. Now he rested near the back of the boat. Someone had placed a cushion beneath his head. The detail is small. It is also tender. There was enough care in that rough boat for someone to prepare a place of stillness. The men spoke quietly as the shore receded. Lights appeared in a few distant houses. The hills became dark shapes beneath the sky. Jesus closed his eyes. He slept. The boat continued moving. No one needed him to remain visibly awake for his presence to be real. He was there in the dark. He was there in the boat. He was there while his companions handled the ropes and watched the water. After some time, the wind changed. The men noticed before the water became rough. A cooler current moved across their faces. The cloth above them pulled in another direction. They adjusted what they could. The wind continued. Small waves became larger. Water crossed the side of the boat and gathered near their feet. One man used a container to lift it out. Another held the rope more tightly. Their movements became quicker, yet there is no need to make the night louder than it was. The deepest tension was not the wind. It was the thought growing inside them. We must hold everything together. They knew the lake. They knew what to do. But knowledge does not always bring peace when fear has entered the body. One man watched the sail. Another watched the water. Another watched the distance between the boat and shore. No one could watch everything. They began to feel the limits of their hands. The boat rose and lowered. The men worked. Jesus slept. Perhaps one of them looked toward him with confusion. How could anyone rest while the water remained unsettled? They may have expected peace to look like a calm lake. Instead, peace was sleeping beside them. The cushion remained beneath his head. His body moved with the boat. He did not need the night to become different before he rested inside the Father's care. Eventually the men woke him. Their words carried fear. Beneath that fear was a question familiar to every restless heart. Are we still held when life feels beyond our control? Jesus rose. He did not share their panic. He did not treat their fear with contempt. His presence remained what it had been while he slept, steady, near, held within a trust deeper than the water. The wind settled. The surface softened. The boat continued toward the other shore. But the lasting image is not only the quiet that followed, it is the rest that came before. Jesus slept before the circumstances changed. He rested while the boat was still between shores. He rested while his companions could not see the outcome. He rested in the unfinished middle of the journey. That is where many people find themselves at night, between shores. The day behind you cannot be changed. Tomorrow has not arrived. You are safe in the middle, where nothing can be completed for a few quiet hours. The mind often dislikes this place. It tries to row backward into yesterday. Then it turns and rows forward into tomorrow. It becomes tired without arriving anywhere. The boat offers another way. Remain here. Let the shores be distant. Let God be present in the middle. The men in the boat believed safety would come only when the lake became still. Yet they had not been abandoned during the wind. The Lord was already with them. Presence came before calm. Grace came before understanding. They were held before they felt held. This is one of the quiet ways God teaches surrender. He does not always remove uncertainty before asking the heart to rest. Sometimes he gives his presence inside uncertainty, not an explanation. A presence, not control. Companionship, not a view of the entire journey. Enough grace for the boat you are in. The story says something gentle about sleep itself. Closing the eyes is not an act of carelessness. It is a daily surrender. Every night you release the visible world. You stop directing your hands. You stop answering the room. You allow hours to pass without your supervision. This surrender is built into being human. You have practiced it many times. You may not have called it trust, but the body knows. It lowers itself. It becomes still. It lets the night carry what daylight could not finish. Sleep says the world may continue without my watching. Sleep says God remains present when I cannot remain alert. Sleep says I am a beloved creature, not the keeper of every shore. You do not have to force this surrender. Even lying awake can become a gentler kind of rest when the struggle ends. You can be awake without standing guard. You can have thoughts without following them across the lake. You can feel the movement of an unfinished life and still remember who is in the boat. God is not distant tonight. God is not waiting on the other shore. God is present here. The water may move, the boat may feel small, the way ahead may remain dark. You are not alone. Imagine the boat after the wind had passed. Water still rested along the wooden floor. Ropes needed arranging. The men were tired. Peace did not make the journey unreal. It changed the way they inhabited it. The one who had slept remained among them. Perhaps he returned to the cushion. Perhaps the companions sat more quietly as the boat continued. The far shore slowly became visible. No one had brought it closer through worry. The distance closed because the boat kept moving. There are movements in your life that continue quietly tonight. Time carries you. Grace accompanies you. God holds what lies beyond your sight. You do not have to pull tomorrow toward you. It will arrive in its own hour. For now, there is only this part of the crossing, a dark sky, a small boat, a presence that does not leave. That is enough. Perhaps your storm is not dramatic. Most storms of the mind are made of small things repeated. A sentence from earlier, a bill on a table, an appointment approaching, a silence you do not understand. Each thought returns like water touching the side of the boat. You do not need to answer every wave. You do not need to calm the whole lake. You do not need to reach the shore tonight. Let go of the oar for a moment. Let the rope rest in stronger hands. Surrender is not the claim that nothing matters. It is the trust that what matters is also known by God. Your concerns are known. Your tiredness is known. Your desire for peace is known. You are beloved before you solve anything. You are beloved while the answer remains hidden. You are beloved in the boat exactly as you are. The storm does not change that. The darkness does not change that. Wakefulness does not change that. You are safe. The same God who holds the seed beneath the soil holds the work you left unfinished. The same grace that lets the bow return holds your tired body. The same presence that rested in the boat remains near in every uncertain crossing. These are not separate lessons. They are one invitation, repeated through different images. Plant what you can, then surrender the field. Do what the day allows, then leave the kitchen. Offer your strength, then let the bow return. Travel the water, then trust the presence in the boat. God does not teach letting go by asking you to care less. He teaches by showing you that His care is already there. Before your effort, grace. Beneath your effort, grace. After your effort, grace. You can be still inside that grace. You can let go without falling. You can surrender without being forgotten. The night is safe, and you are safe. Long after that crossing, the companions would have known other nights. Some were probably calm. Others carried their own uncertainty. They could not remain forever on one remembered lake. Yet the image could travel with them. Not the image of their fear, the image of the cushion. Something about that simple place of stillness may have changed the way they understood God. The Lord had not waited for comfort before receiving sleep. He had accepted the care available in a small boat. There may be a cushion offered to you tonight. Not a perfect answer. Not a guarantee about tomorrow. Only the ordinary place where your head already rests. The room may not feel completely peaceful. Your life may not feel settled. The boat was not a bedroom, and the lake was not still. Stillness was received anyway. You are allowed to receive what is available now. The weight of a blanket, the quiet beneath the words, the simple mercy of having nowhere else to be for this moment. God often teaches through what is already near. A seed, a bowl, a bow, a cushion in a boat. None of these things explains the whole mystery. Each holds a small doorway into trust. The seed releases its old shape. The dough receives time. The bow returns from tension. The sleeping figure rests between shores, and the heart slowly learns. It can care without controlling. It can work without earning love. It can soften without becoming weak. It can sleep without abandoning the world. This is peace through surrender. It is not dramatic. It arrives in small permissions. Let the field remain dark. Let the kitchen remain unfinished. Let the string become loose. Let the water move without answering every wave. God is still here. Grace is still working. You are still beloved. Perhaps surrender is beginning to sound less like losing and more like being carried. That is the quiet meaning beneath these stories. Surrender does not empty life of love. Surrender places love inside a greater love. It is a movement of trust, and trust can be very small tonight. Grace receives small trust. Grace receives the tired mind that returns to worry. Grace receives the heart that can only let go for a moment before reaching back again. You remain beloved. There is no need to perform surrender perfectly, because perfect surrender is not another achievement waiting at the end of effort. It is simply the repeated permission to trust that God is near. You release one thought, and grace remains. The thought returns, and grace remains again. This is gentle trust. You can surrender the conversation that cannot be changed tonight. You can surrender the answer that has not arrived. You can surrender the future of someone beloved, not because that future matters less, but because divine love reaches where your hands cannot. Grace reaches there. You can surrender the version of today that you wish had happened. You can surrender the words you might have spoken more clearly. Trust does not rewrite the day. Trust allows the day to rest inside mercy. Peace can begin there. You can surrender the need to feel peaceful immediately. Even that desire may be placed into grace. Peace is not watching you from a distance, waiting for your mind to become empty. Peace is already near the part of you that remains unsettled. There is a story sometimes told about a woman who kept a lamp burning by her window each night. She lived at the edge of a small village where the road curved into darkness before it reached the hills. Her son had gone traveling far away. She did not know the length of his journey. She did not know the day he would return. She only knew that he would come along that road, and that the road was hard to see at night. So each evening she lit the lamp. She set it on the wooden sill. She trimmed the wick with care. The flame was small, but it was steady. She told herself a simple thing. If he arrives in the dark, he will know which house is his. He will see one light waiting. He will know that someone remembered him. For a while, she stayed awake beside the lamp. She watched the road. She listened for footsteps. Every sound in the night became a question. Was that him? Was that the wind? Was that only a branch moving against the wall? She held her breath at each small noise. Her shoulders grew tight. Her eyes grew tired. She was guarding the light as though the flame depended on her, watching. The nights were long. Sleep pulled at her, but she resisted. She believed that if she closed her eyes, something might be lost. Perhaps he would pass and she would miss him. Perhaps the flame would fail while she slept. So she sat upright in the wooden chair, and she stared at the small fire until the room blurred. One night, an older neighbor came to sit with her. The neighbor had lit many lamps in her own long life. She saw the tired eyes. She saw the tight hands. She said something gentle. "The lamp does not need your watching," she said. "It needs only your lighting. You have already done your part." The woman did not understand at first. "But if I sleep," she said, "who will keep the light?" The neighbor smiled. "The light keeps itself. You gave it oil. You gave it a wick. You gave it a place by the window. The flame will burn while you rest. Your watching adds nothing to it." These were quiet words. They entered slowly. The woman looked at the lamp again. It was true. The flame did not burn brighter because she stared at it. It did not weaken when she looked away. It simply continued. Her attention was not its fuel. Her worry was not its keeper. The lamp had been doing its work all along, whether she watched or not. That night, for the first time in many weeks, she let herself lie down. She placed the lamp where it could be seen from the road. Then she rested. Her eyes closed. The tightness in her shoulders began to loosen. She had lit the flame. The flame would carry the night. She did not need to hold it with her eyes. And this is a gentle picture of trust. There is work that belongs to your hands. There is work that does not. You can prepare. You can care. You can set the lamp where it needs to be. But you do not need to guard the flame with sleepless eyes. Some things continue without your watching. Grace is one of them. Perhaps tonight there is a lamp you have been guarding. Perhaps you have been staring at something, afraid that if you rest, it will fail. A worry, a person you love, a situation you cannot fix by watching. You have lit the lamp. You have done your part. Now the light can keep itself while you rest. You do not have to hold the whole night open with your eyes. You do not have to watch the road until dawn. The one who loves you keeps a longer watch than you can. You are allowed to close your eyes. The flame will burn. You are safe while you sleep. The woman slept, and the lamp burned, and the road remained lit. And when morning came, the flame had not needed her at all. It had simply kept its quiet promise through the dark. Rest is like that. It trusts that the light will hold. You can rest now. The lamp is lit. Peace is near. There is a story told among the old ones about a man who carried water up a hill each morning. He lived where the well was low and the house was high, and the only path between them was a long climb of worn stone. Every dawn he took 2 jars. He filled them at the well. Then he began the slow walk upward, one careful step at a time. The jars were heavy. The path was steep. By the time he reached his door, his arms ached and his back bent. He set the water down. He rested a moment. Then he looked at the empty jars and knew that tomorrow he would climb again. This was his life. He did not complain, but he carried a heavier thing than water. He carried the fear of not having enough. Each night, before he slept, he would count. He counted the water in the house. He counted the days until the next rain. He counted what he might need if a guest came, if he fell ill, if the well ran dry. The counting followed him into the dark. It sat beside his bed. It whispered numbers when he wished to rest. He held his supply the way a frightened hand holds a coin. One evening a traveler stopped at his door and asked for water. The man hesitated. He thought of his careful counting. He thought of the long climb. For a moment he wanted to say the jars were empty, but something softened in him, and he poured a full cup and gave it away. The traveler drank. He blessed the house. Then he went on into the dusk. That night, the man expected to feel the loss. He had given away water he had carried up the hill with aching arms. He waited for the anxious counting to begin, but instead, something unexpected settled over him. The cup he had given had not emptied his house. The jars were nearly as full as before, and a strange lightness had entered where the worry usually sat. He began to notice something he had not seen. The well had never once run dry. Every morning, for all his years, the water had been there. He had climbed in fear of an emptiness that had never come. Each dawn the well had waited for him, full and quiet, offering what he needed. His fear had carried a weight that the world had never actually placed on him. He lay back on his mat. He let the counting stop. "There is enough for tonight," he told himself, "and tonight is all that is being asked of me. The next climb belongs to the next morning. The next need belongs to the God who fills the well." He did not have to carry tomorrow up the hill tonight. He only had to rest. And this is a picture of a gentler trust. You may be counting something in the dark: your strength, your time, your resources, the parts of you that feel nearly spent. You may be guarding a supply against a dryness that has not come and may never come. The counting feels like wisdom, but at night it is only weight. The well of grace has not run dry. It filled this day. It will fill the next. You do not have to carry every future morning while you lie here now. You do not have to hold enough for a lifetime tonight. You need only enough for this hour, and this hour is already provided. Rest. You are carried. There is enough. The man slept without counting, and the well remained full, and the morning gave him water as it always had. His arms would climb again at dawn. But the night was for resting, not for carrying. He set the jars down inside his heart. He let the numbers go. Peace filled the space where fear had been. You can set your jars down too. Whatever you have been carrying up the hill of this day, you can place it beside you now. The climbing is finished for tonight. The well is not yours to fill. The morning is not yours to solve. You are allowed to be empty-handed and safe. Grace holds what you have released. There is a story sometimes told about a young weaver who worked at a great loom. She had learned the craft from her grandmother, whose hands had grown too old to work the threads. Now the loom was hers. It stood tall in the corner of the house, strung with long lines of quiet color, waiting each day for her fingers to continue the pattern. She loved the work, but she carried it too tightly. She wanted every row to be perfect. She wanted no thread out of place, no color slightly wrong, no small unevenness in the weave. When she noticed a flaw, she would stop. She would stare at it. She would pull the threads loose and begin the row again and again. And often the second attempt held a new small flaw of its own. The days grew long at the loom. Her hands grew tense. She began to dread the small mistakes more than she loved the growing cloth. In the evening, when she should have rested, she lay awake thinking of the imperfect row. She replayed it. She measured it. She wished she had done it differently. The single flaw filled her mind, while the whole beautiful cloth was forgotten. Her grandmother watched her for many days. The old woman said little. She had woven for 60 years. She knew the loom, and she knew the girl. One evening she came and sat beside the loom and ran her aged fingers slowly across the finished cloth. She felt every row. She felt the flaws the girl had wept over, and she smiled. "Come," she said. "Feel it as I feel it." The girl placed her hand beside her grandmother's. Together they moved along the woven cloth. "Here," said the old woman, "is a row you thought was ruined. And here, and here." The girl felt them, and she noticed something. Under the whole of her hand, the small flaws disappeared into the pattern. They were part of it now. They did not break the cloth. They belonged to it. No weaver ever made a cloth without a flaw, the grandmother said. The flaw is not the enemy of the cloth. It is woven in. It becomes part of the whole. When you stop and stare at one thread, you see only the thread. When you feel the whole cloth, the thread finds its place. These were slow words, spoken from long hands. They settled over the girl like warmth. The girl understood something then. She had been living inside a single thread. She had let one small row become the whole story. But the cloth was long, and it was beautiful, and the flaws had already been gathered into its beauty. She did not need to unravel her days to fix each imperfect row. She could let the whole weave carry them. That night, she slept without replaying the row. She let the loom stand quiet in the corner. The cloth was growing. It did not need her worry to grow well. Her hands could rest. The pattern would continue tomorrow. And whatever small flaws the day had held were already being woven into something whole and good. And this is a gentle image for the tired mind. Perhaps you are staring at one row of your day. One thing you wish you had done differently. One word, one choice, one small failure that fills your whole attention while the long cloth of your life is forgotten. The single thread feels enormous in the dark, but it is only one row. Your days are being woven into something larger than any one flaw. Grace is the long cloth that gathers the imperfect rows and makes them part of the whole. You do not have to unravel the day tonight. You do not have to fix the thread. You can let it rest inside the pattern. The weaver of your life is not staring at the flaw. The weaver is holding the whole cloth with tenderness. You are carried inside a longer pattern than you can see. Let the one row rest. Let the whole weave carry it. You are not defined by the imperfect thread. You are held by the hands that gather every row into grace. Rest now. The cloth is good. Peace is woven through it. There is a story told among the desert fathers about a young monk who could not stop his thoughts. He had come to the quiet places to find peace. He had left the noise of the city, the busy streets, the endless talk. He had believed that silence outside would bring silence within. But when he sat down to rest in the stillness, his mind became louder than any city he had known. Thoughts arrived without invitation. Memories, worries, plans for tomorrow, regrets from years ago, small angers, sudden fears. They came one after another, an endless procession across the quiet of his mind. He tried to force them away. He fought each thought as it appeared. He pushed, he struggled, and the more he fought, the more they came. He grew discouraged. He believed a peaceful heart meant an empty mind. He believed that if he were truly holy, no thought would trouble his rest. So each intrusion felt like failure. Each wandering felt like proof that he was not yet at peace. He began to dread the silence, because the silence showed him his own restless mind. At last he went to an old teacher who had lived many years in the desert. He confessed his trouble. "I cannot stop my thoughts," he said. "I sit to rest, and they will not leave me. I fight them all night, and I lose. How do I make my mind empty and still?" The old man listened. Then he did not answer with words. He led the young monk outside. They stood together beside a slow river. The water moved past them, quiet and steady, carrying leaves and small branches upon its surface. "Watch the river," the old man said. "See how the leaves float by. Do you try to stop them? Do you reach in and hold each one?" The young monk shook his head. "No," he said. "I only watch them pass." "Your thoughts are the leaves," said the teacher. "The river does not fight what floats upon it. It lets each thing pass, and it remains the river. You have been reaching into the water to grab every leaf. That is why you are tired. Let them float. Let them pass. You do not have to hold them. You do not have to fight them. You are the river, not the leaves. The young monk watched the water for a long time. A leaf came. It passed. Another came. It passed. The river did not tighten. The river did not chase. The river simply carried what arrived and let it go. And slowly something in the young monk began to soften. He did not have to empty his mind. He only had to stop gripping what moved through it. That night he sat again in the silence. The thoughts came as they always did, but this time he did not fight them. A worry arrived. He let it float by. A memory came. He let it pass. He did not grab. He did not push. He simply rested beneath the moving surface, and he found that the thoughts, when unopposed, drifted away on their own. And this is a mercy for anyone whose mind will not grow quiet at night. Perhaps you have been fighting your thoughts. Perhaps you have believed that rest requires an empty mind, and each wandering thought has felt like a failure. But you do not have to empty the river. You do not have to catch every leaf. You are allowed to let them pass. The thoughts may come tonight. Let them come. Let them float by like leaves on slow water. You do not have to hold them. You do not have to solve them. You do not have to fight them into silence. You are not the passing thought. You are held in something deeper than the moving surface. Peace is not the empty mind. Peace is the river that lets each leaf go. Let your thoughts drift now. Whatever arrives, let it pass. You are not required to grab it. You are held beneath the surface in the quiet current of grace. The leaves will float by, and you will remain, and rest will come not from an empty mind, but from a heart that has stopped its gripping. You are safe here. Let them pass. There is a story sometimes told about a child who fell asleep in a moving cart. It was evening, and the family was returning home along a country road after a long day. The cart rocked gently over the earth. The horse walked its slow and steady pace. The father held the reins. The mother sat beside him. And in the back, among the blankets, the youngest child began to grow tired. The child fought the tiredness at first, as children do. There was still so much to see, the fading light on the fields, the first stars appearing, the shapes of trees passing slowly against the sky. But the cart rocked, and the road was long, and the warmth of the blankets was gentle. Soon the small eyes grew heavy. The head began to nod. And then the child did a simple thing, without thinking, without deciding. The child let go. The small body relaxed completely into the blankets. The hands opened, the breathing slowed. There was no worry about the road, no concern for the direction, no question of whether they would arrive. The child did not hold the reins. The child did not watch the path. The child simply drifted, carried by hands that were awake. This is the deepest kind of rest. The child did not know the way home. The child could not have found it alone in the dark. But the child did not need to. The father knew the road. The father held the reins. The father watched the darkening path while the child slept in perfect trust. The whole journey continued, safe and steady, while the small one rested completely. The cart moved through the night. The road turned where it needed to turn. The horse knew its way, and the child slept on, undisturbed, carried through darkness the child could not see, toward a home the child could not find alone. There was no fear in that sleep. There was only trust so complete that it did not even know itself as trust. It was simply rest. And when at last the cart reached the door, the father did not wake the child to walk inside. He lifted the small sleeping body in his arms. He carried the child through the doorway. He laid the child gently in a warm bed, and the child, still sleeping, was simply home. The child had done nothing. The child had only rested, and love had carried the child all the way. This is how you are held tonight. You do not need to know the road. You do not need to watch the path. You do not need to hold the reins of the night or steer yourself toward morning. You are the child in the cart. You are being carried by one who is awake, who knows the way, who watches the darkness you cannot see. You can let go the way the child let go. You can open your hands. You can relax completely into the blankets of this hour. You do not have to find your way to sleep by holding tightly. Sleep comes to the ones who release the reins. You are carried. You are held. The road is known by hands that are stronger than yours. And if you drift off before this story ends, that is well. Like the child, you will be carried the rest of the way. You do not have to arrive by your own effort. You do not have to stay awake to reach your rest. Love will carry you through the door you cannot see and lay you gently down, and you will simply be home. Let go now into the gentle rocking of this quiet hour. You are safe in the cart. The reins are held. The way is known. The one who loves you is awake through all the darkness, watching the road while you rest. You are the beloved child carried home. There is nothing to hold. There is only rest. You are held. Peace carries you now. There is a story sometimes told about a gardener who could not stop pruning. He tended a small garden behind a stone wall, and he loved it more than almost anything. Roses climbed the old trellis. Herbs grew in careful rows. A single fruit tree stood in the corner, older than the wall itself. The gardener gave his whole heart to that quiet place. But his love had a restless edge. He could not leave the garden alone. He pruned when pruning was needed, and then he pruned again. He cut a branch, then worried he had cut too little, and cut once more. He straightened stems that were already straight. He adjusted what did not need adjusting. His hands were always moving, always correcting, always afraid that if he stopped, something would go wrong. In the evening, when the light grew soft and the birds came to rest in the branches, the gardener could not rest with them. He walked the rows again. He looked for the flaw he might have missed. He touched each plant with anxious fingers. The garden was beautiful, but he could not see its beauty because he was always looking for what still needed fixing. An old woman lived nearby, and she too kept a garden. Hers was not as tidy as his. There were wild corners where she let things grow as they would. There were flowers she had never planted, arrived on the wind, welcomed where they fell. Her garden had a looseness to it, a softness, a sense that it was allowed simply to be. The gardener did not understand it. One evening she found him still working long after the sun had gone down, pruning by the last gray light, his shoulders tight, his face drawn. She watched him for a while. Then she spoke gently. "The garden grows while you sleep," she said. "Do you know this? The roots drink in the dark. The leaves open before dawn. The tree fruits in a season you cannot hurry. Most of the growing happens without you." The gardener stopped. He had never thought of it that way. He had believed that his constant work was what kept the garden alive. But the old woman was pointing at something true. The deepest work of the garden was not his. He opened the soil, yes. He planted, yes. He watered when the sky was dry. But the growing itself, the mysterious turning of seed into stem into flower, belonged to something far larger than his tired hands. "You may set down the shears," she said. "The garden does not need your worry. It needs your care, and you have given it. Now it needs your trust. Let it grow tonight without you watching. You will find it more beautiful in the morning, not because you pruned it in the dark, but because you let it be still and rested yourself." These were kind words. They loosened something in him. That night the gardener did a thing he had not done in years. He went inside while there was still work he could have done. He left a branch uncut. He left a row unstraightened. He lay down, and though it was difficult at first, he let the garden be. And in the dark, without him, the roots drank, and the leaves prepared to open, and the old tree held its slow fruit toward a ripening he could not rush. And this is a picture for the ones who cannot stop fixing. Perhaps you are like the gardener. Perhaps you love something so much that you cannot leave it alone. A person, a plan, a part of your own heart you keep trying to prune into perfection. Perhaps you lie awake, correcting, adjusting, searching for the flaw you might have missed. Your care is real, but at night it has become a weight. You may set down the shears tonight. The garden of your life grows in the dark, in ways you do not control and cannot hurry. The deepest work is not yours. Grace tends the roots you cannot reach. You have given your care. Now you are allowed to give your trust. Let it grow tonight without your watching. Rest. You are held. The growing does not depend on your worry. The garden does not need you awake. What you love is held by hands larger than yours through the whole of the night while you rest. You can leave the branch uncut. You can leave the row unstraightened. You can lie down in the middle of the unfinished work, and the unfinished work will be tended by grace. Peace grows in the garden you have released. The gardener slept, and the garden grew, and the morning came soft and green over the old stone wall. There was still pruning to do. There is always something, but it could wait for the light. The night was for stillness, and the gardener learned, slowly, that love does not mean holding tightly. Sometimes love means letting go and trusting the garden to the one who made it grow. Rest now. What you love is safe. There is a story told among the old ones about a fisherman who feared the deep water. He had lived beside the sea his whole life. He knew the shallows well, where the water was clear and the bottom could be seen. He fished there, close to the shore, where his feet could almost touch the sand beneath. He was a careful man. He did not like what he could not see. But the fish he needed lived farther out, in the deep water, where the sea grew dark below and the bottom fell away beyond all seeing. The old fishermen went there without fear. They cast their nets into the depth. They trusted the boat to hold them above water they could not measure. But this fisherman stayed close to shore, and his nets came up light, and he wondered why his catch was always small. An older fisherman noticed this. He had spent his life on the deep water. He knew its moods, its darkness, its quiet strength. One morning, he invited the younger man into his boat. "Come out with me," he said, "past the shallows into the deep. There is nothing to fear there that is not also here. The water only looks more frightening because you cannot see the bottom." They rowed out together, past the clear shallows, into the place where the sea turned dark and deep beneath the boat. The younger man gripped the sides. He looked down into the water and saw only darkness falling away below him. His heart tightened. There was nothing to stand on here, nothing his feet could reach, only the deep and the small boat and the far distance to the shore. "Feel the boat beneath you," the old man said. "It does not matter how deep the water is. The boat holds you the same. In 2 feet of water or 200, the boat floats the same way. The depth below you does not change what carries you. You are held by the boat, not by the bottom. Stop reaching for the sand with your feet. There is no sand here. There is only the boat, and the boat is enough." The younger man listened. He looked down again at the dark water. It was true. His feet had never touched the bottom anyway, even in the shallows. It had only been near enough to comfort him. But the boat had carried him the whole time. Not the bottom, the boat. And the boat floated just as well over the deep as over the shallows. The depth had frightened him, but it had never been what held him up. Slowly his hands loosened on the sides of the boat. He let himself feel the gentle rise and fall of the water beneath the hull. The deep was still there, dark and vast below him. But he was not in the deep. He was in the boat, and the boat was held on the surface, carried by the same water that fell away beneath into darkness. He did not need to see the bottom to be safe. He only needed to trust the boat. That day, the younger man cast his net into the deep water for the first time, and it came up full. He had spent years in the shallows, afraid of what he could not see, and his fear had kept him from the very depth where his life was waiting. Now he rested in the boat, over water he could not measure, and he was held, and his net was heavy with good things. And this is a picture for the hearts that fear the deep. Perhaps tonight you are looking down into something you cannot see the bottom of. A question without an answer, a future you cannot measure, a darkness that falls away below you into the unknown, and your heart is tight, your hands are gripping, your feet are reaching for solid ground that is not there. But you are not held by the bottom, you are held by the boat. You do not need to see the depth to be safe above it. The one who carries you floats you just as surely over the deep as over the shallows. The darkness below does not change what holds you up. You are carried on the surface by a love that does not depend on your seeing the bottom. Rest in the boat. You are held. Let your feet stop reaching for the sand. There is no sand tonight, and there does not need to be. There is only the boat, and the boat is enough. The deep water can fall away below you into mystery, and you can rest upon it, carried and safe. You do not have to understand the depth to sleep above it. You are carried by grace, floated by mercy, carried on the surface of a night you cannot measure. Peace holds you here. The fisherman slept in his boat that night, rocked gently on the deep water, unafraid. The darkness fell away below him, vast and unknown, and he rested upon it, held not by anything he could see, but by the quiet strength that had carried him all along. You can be still like that now, above the deep, held by the boat, carried by love. There is nothing to see, there is only rest. Peace carries you now. There is a story sometimes told about a man who carried a heavy pack across a long country, refusing every offer of help along the way. He had set out on a difficult road, and he believed that a strong person carried his own burden without leaning on anyone. The pack held everything he owned and everything he feared to lose, and it pressed upon his shoulders with a weight that grew heavier as the miles unfolded beneath his tired feet. The road wound through villages and fields, past rivers and low hills, and at each turning he met kind people who saw the strain in his back and offered to share the load. A farmer offered his cart for a stretch of the journey. A group of travelers offered to carry the pack between them in turns. A boatman offered to ferry both the man and his burden across a wide and gentle river. And each time, without quite knowing why, the man refused and walked on alone beneath the weight he had decided was his to carry. He believed something that many tired hearts believe. He believed that accepting help would mean he was weak, that setting down the burden, even for an hour, would prove he could not manage, that the whole meaning of his journey depended on carrying every pound of it himself, from the first step to the last. So he tightened the straps across his aching shoulders, and he pressed on, and the weight became a kind of proof he offered to no one but himself. By evening, he could barely walk. His legs trembled beneath him. His back had bent into a permanent curve, and his breath came short and shallow, and the beautiful country he had traveled through had passed unseen, because his eyes had been fixed only on the road immediately before his feet. He had crossed rivers without noticing their light. He had passed through fields without smelling their sweetness. The burden had taken not only his strength, but his sight. At the end of that long day, he came to a small house where an old man sat quietly on a bench beside the door, watching the last light fade across the hills. The old man saw the traveler approaching, bent nearly double beneath his enormous pack, and he said nothing at first. He simply made room on the bench and gestured for the man to sit, and waited while the traveler lowered himself down with a groan of exhaustion. For a long while neither of them spoke. The evening settled softly around them, and the first stars appeared above the darkening hills, and the man felt the great weight still pressing on his shoulders even as he sat, because he had not thought to take it off. He had carried it so long that he had forgotten it could be removed, and it had become less a burden he was carrying than a shape he had grown into, a permanent tension he no longer questioned. "You may set it down, you know," the old man said at last, his voice gentle and unhurried in the quiet of the evening. "The ground will hold it just as well as your shoulders have, and it will still be here in the morning, when you have rested and grown strong enough to decide what truly needs carrying and what you have been carrying only out of fear." These were slow and patient words, and they entered the traveler's weary heart like water into dry earth. The man looked at the old teacher, and something in him that had been clenched for a very long time began at last to loosen. He reached up with trembling hands and unfastened the straps that had pressed into his shoulders for so many miles, and he let the great pack slide slowly down his back and settle onto the ground beside the bench. And the relief that flooded through his body in that moment was so complete, so unexpected, that his eyes filled with quiet tears. He had not known how heavy it was until he set it down. He had carried it so long that the weight had come to feel like a part of himself, and only in its absence could he feel how much it had cost him. His shoulders rose. His back straightened for the first time in days. His breath deepened and slowed, and he sat there in the evening air, unburdened, light, held by nothing but the simple bench and the quiet company of the old man beside him. "Rest now," the old man said. "The road will still be there tomorrow, and so will the pack, and you will be far stronger to face both after a night of sleep than you would be pressing on through the dark. There is no strength in carrying what you were never meant to carry alone. The strong heart is not the one that refuses all help. It is the one that knows when to set the burden down and let itself be held." And this is a picture for anyone who has been carrying too much for too long. Perhaps you are like this traveler, bent beneath a weight you have decided is yours alone, refusing every offer of rest because some old belief tells you that setting it down would mean you were weak. Perhaps you have carried it so long that you have forgotten it can be removed, and it has become less a burden you hold than a tension you have grown into. You may set it down now. The ground of this quiet hour will hold whatever you have been carrying, and it will still be there in the morning if it truly needs carrying, and much of it, you may find, was only ever fear. You do not have to hold the whole weight of your life through the night. You do not have to prove your strength by refusing rest. The strong heart is the one that knows when to lay the burden down and let itself be held. Feel the straps loosen across your tired shoulders. Feel the great weight slide slowly down and settle onto the ground beside you. Feel your back straighten and your breath deepen, and the relief flood gently through your body as you realize, perhaps for the first time in a long while, how heavy it had become. You are unburdened now. You are light. You are held by the quiet of this hour, and you owe nothing, and you must carry nothing, and you may simply rest. The traveler slept that night beside the old man's house, deeper and more peacefully than he had slept in many years. And in the morning he woke rested and strong, and he looked at his pack in the clear light of day and understood, at last, how much of it he could leave behind. Rest does that. It gives us the strength and the clarity to set down what we were never meant to carry. You can be still like that now. The burden is on the ground. You are held. Peace has come to your unburdened heart. You are beloved there. The farmer did not create trust by staring at the field. The brother did not create grace by cleaning the final pot. The young man did not create peace by pulling the bow tighter. The companions did not create safety by watching every wave. Each one received something. The woman did not keep the flame alive by refusing to sleep. The lamp burned while she rested. The man did not fill the well by counting his water in the dark. The well was full without his fear. The weaver did not perfect the cloth by staring at one flawed row. The whole weave held the flaw with tenderness. Each of them stopped gripping. Each of them was carried. The young monk did not find peace by fighting his thoughts. Peace came when he let the leaves float by. The child did not reach home by holding the reins. Love carried the child through the dark. The gardener did not keep the garden alive by pruning in the night. The garden grew while he slept. The fisherman was not held by the bottom of the sea. The boat carried him over the deep. Each one released what could not be gripped. Each one was carried into rest. The farmer received the hidden work of grace. The brother received permission to stop. The young man received a gentler understanding of strength. The companions received a presence that had never left the boat. The watching woman received the freedom to close her eyes. The counting man received an emptied hand and a full well. The weaver received the whole cloth. The monk received the slow river. The child received a home it did not have to find. The gardener received a garden that grows without him. The fisherman received a boat that floats over any depth. Receiving is also surrender. It lets goodness arrive without being earned. It lets trust become a gift instead of a demand. It lets the beloved heart become quiet without first proving that it deserves quiet. You are beloved now. Perhaps one of these images has stayed near you. The lamp in the window, burning without your watching. The full well that never once ran dry. The long cloth that gathers every flawed row into beauty. The slow river that lets each leaf float past. The child asleep in the moving cart, carried by hands that are awake. The garden growing green in the dark. The boat that holds you over water you cannot measure. Each one is a small doorway into the same quiet truth. You do not have to hold what is already held. Peace is near. Peace asks nothing. Peace is already here. You can let the images rest now, the way you can let everything else rest. You do not have to remember them. You do not have to hold them. They have done their gentle work simply by passing through. What matters is not the story, but the stillness it leaves behind. And the stillness is peace. It is the peace that does not depend on your effort. It is the peace that remains near the part of you that is still awake. You are held inside that peace. You are beloved now. If your thoughts continue moving, they can move inside grace. If your body remains tense, it can soften inside grace. If sleep has not yet come, you can wait without measuring the minutes, because trust does not require a particular outcome. Surrender this minute, then surrender the next, only when it comes. There is no need to carry an entire night at once. God gives grace in the present, and the present is smaller than fear suggests. This moment is safe. The next moment belongs to grace. The field belongs to grace. The unfinished work belongs to grace. The changing water belongs to the God who calls you beloved. Let go gently, trust gently, surrender gently. Peace does not need to be chased. Grace does not need to be persuaded. You do not need to become less human before God can hold you with tenderness. You are beloved. You can surrender what you understand and what you do not. You can trust without seeing the shore. You can let go without knowing what will grow beneath the soil. Grace is enough. Trust is enough. For tonight, surrender is enough. Surrender can be quiet. Surrender can be gradual. And surrender can return whenever worry returns. Trust remains possible while peace stays near, because trust grows gently and peace asks nothing more. Peace remains. You do not need to remember everything you heard tonight. If one image stayed with you, let that be enough. Perhaps it was the seed beneath the soil, the bread beneath the cloth, the resting bough, or the quiet presence in the boat. And if nothing stayed, that is fine too. Some things settle into us without our knowing. Grace does not depend on memory. If you are still with us, thank you for staying. If you have already drifted off, thank you for that too. Wherever you are right now, you are welcome here, exactly as you are. You are safe. You are not alone. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Midnight Chapel.